You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
I think I loved who I thought that you were. Now I must think it over. You never were who I thought you were. Never my four-leaf clover. I painted my dreams on the canvas. You seemed under fresh paint, hidden figures. Layers on layers that I could not believe. Never my pretty picture. You were never my pretty picture. Four-leaf clover. Ever after happily. Star-crossed lover. Endless summer. Flesh and blood fantasy. We stared up at the sky and we didn't know why, but I thought we were made for forever. But I look in your eye, just the truth you denied. Never my star-crossed lover. On that hot day in July, on the beach you took my heart in your hand and you held her. But when leaves turn to gold, all your lies they got told. Never my endless summer. You were never my pretty picture. Four-leaf clover. Ever after happily. Star-crossed lover. Endless summer. Flesh and blood fantasy. You were never mine, never mine. You were never mine, never mine. You were never mine, never mine. Never mine, never mine, never mine. You were never my pretty picture. Four-leaf clover. Ever after happily. Star-crossed lover. Endless summer. Flesh and blood fantasy. Never mind, never mind.
Never mind, never mind. We got Blair Borax who performed that song. It's off her album, Keep Walking. Blair, I'm very excited to have you on Something Rather Than Nothing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's always great to talk about art, philosophy, and creating things, and in the music you create. I was telling you before we went on here. Just really love this album. Keep Walking came out this year, and a beautiful photo in cover art and beautiful music. Tell us a little about Keep Walking, this album.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I released Keep Walking on June 10th, 2022. It was also the day that I quit my job as a teacher. Well, really, I gave them notice way in advance, but it was my last day of work as a teacher, and I decided to release the album on the same day, which was maybe a bit crazy thing to do or something. But that's kind of how I roll. So it was kind of leaping into my music career as far as like that timing goes. And the album, it's 9 songs. It's my debut full-length album. And I recorded it, produced it with James Via at Groundswell Studios. So it was very much a collaboration in that way. It's obviously, you can hear it's not just me and my guitar. He helped a lot with the arrangements and played most of the instruments. He's a very multi-talented person, and I'm super grateful to get to work with him. And the content of the album is a lot of it is kind of angry breakup songs, you might say.
Yeah.
I was processing a bad breakup from a worse relationship, I would say. It was a short and not sweet relationship, but it was pretty traumatic, I would say. And so the way that I process my emotions and the difficult experiences that I might go through is through songwriting. And so I was really grateful for that process, because I got to take this really painful experience that I had and turn it into an album in less than a year. And so it felt like a really empowering way to move forward, to keep walking, keep my head held high through those difficult experiences, and keep moving forward and healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And storytelling and song, obviously be a art and helping bring that along. That's great to hear. I during my day job I work with the teachers and rep teachers and stuff, and I know how big of a deal teaching is for teachers. So I guess maybe I'm a little sensitive to the jump that you made right there. Can tell us a little bit about as far as identity and I mean, you're always a teacher in a certain sense, but like that big step that day, going from one to the other.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely big leap of faith. Um, I was in the world of education for 8 years before I quit, and I wasn't really planning to be in that world, but it kind of fell into my lap. And for most of those 8 years, for all of them really, I was in alternative education settings, and teaching gardening, cooking, nutrition, health and wellness, mindfulness, and yoga. I was teaching in food banks and Head Start preschools, at like high school farm education programs and community colleges. The last 3 years, I was at a K through 8 school, and I got to teach. I was the health and wellness specialist there, so I taught all those subjects. I got to teach middle school health and sex ed, which was a really gratifying thing to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it taught me a lot through those 8 years. I grew up a lot through that experience, through all those different experiences, but it wasn't really feeding my soul anymore. And unfortunately, education is not the most valued field
Yeah.
financially and otherwise. But I just made the decision, like, this is not going to work for me long term, so I better make a different choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a leap, like you said. And it's great to connect with you here and talk about art and talk about creating in the sense of how it's helped you as well, and probably helps others in listening to your music. But conceptual podcast, of course, and some philosophy here on
Mhm.
that. Talking about art, and I talk about art on the show, and thinking about some of the bigger ideas and concepts. So you take a leap into the performing artist, music artist itself. But about art itself, the big question is, what is art for you? What do you think art is, and what value does it have for you?
Um, that's such a good question. It's a big question. I actually, I went to college for visual arts. and environmental studies, but I was doing all sorts of visual arts before I kind of switched my focus to music, which was never really in the game plan. It just, again, kind of fell into my lap via a cheap old free guitar. And I think that humans are innately artists. It took me a long time to be able to call myself an artist. Like when I was studying art in college, I struggled with that a lot. And I know that's another question you like to ask. Jumped the gun. But it took me a long time to use that term to describe myself, because I kind of felt like, I don't know, I have to get to a certain place, or I have to be good enough. Some unnamed place. I don't know what that place is. I don't think it actually exists, because I think humans are innately creative, and part of the creative process is, for me, making meaning out of the human experience and making meaning out of this one life that we all live. I think that's the philosophy part for me, that it's human to try to make meaning out of things. And art for me helps me do that. But I was thinking about this question earlier, and I decided to Google, like, what's actually the dictionary definition?
What is art? What's the right answer?
Yeah, what is the right answer in the Oxford Dictionary? And they said, art is the expression or application of human creative skill. And I thought that, and then they went on to say painting, drawing, that kind of thing. But I think we should broaden our definition of what art is, because creativity can be so many different forms. Like I think of my dad, who's an engineer, which is not my art at all. Like that's like way over my head, and it doesn't connect with me at all. But maybe that's his art, of being able to be a creator in that way, an inventor, in a more like technical sense. But there's this quote that I've thought about for many years about what is art. It's really not what is art, but I think what is good art. And it says, maybe you've heard this one before, but it says, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And I really like that.
I like that.
It's by Caesar A. Cruz. And I think that that's a cool way to look at it, because for my art personally, it's all like in the feelings. For me, it's all comes from the feelings, and I hope to make people or help people feel things. And I write a lot of songs about my experience of being a woman, and I think some of those songs can hopefully will comfort other women who've had similar experiences, and might make men a little bit uncomfortable. To the point where they're questioning what their role in that dynamic is.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, and I like on that definition, because the reason why I heard you say is because I think I think about art in maybe two very different ways that are captured there. One is like of the processing, or maybe the connecting to the song, or for me, like the metal song, to get out all those frustrations and that piece. But there's also the piece of the art where folks are comfortable, they are settled, they are prejudiced, they are all these type of things, and it's within there too, that your comfort, which is based on some illegitimacy, maybe, that you have to look at things a different way and have that disruptive piece of it, which we don't think is maybe like healthy, like in the sense of being disrupted, but disrupting folks, making folks think. When you talk about art and like even asking that question, one of the things I like to do is to kind of to get into the thinking of what the experience is, and to try to articulate it with words, which is difficult with big questions like this. I wanted to ask you, Blair, about I when you're talking about taking on the roles, like along the lines of identity, right? So we say you're a teacher, and then you're an artist, right? And I think we know that there's a lot of pieces, that are within both. But when you started to call yourself an artist, started to call yourself a musician, I know I've gone through the process of when I saw myself as an artist over the last few years of it felt so weird. And then you say it, and then kind of you are. What is that magic place that you arrive to? And you are. That big leap did that feel like a big leap of identity for you and how you present yourself with that move?
I think so. Yeah, I think it really wasn't until maybe a couple years ago that I really felt like I could own that identity. Even when I first started performing live in in public, which the first time I did that was an open mic in 2018. So it's been 4 years since that first open mic, and even when I did that, I was like shitting my pants, scared. I don't know if I'm supposed to curse on this thing. I forgot to
Yeah, you're
ask.
supposed to, particularly if it captures the experience and how you felt.
Okay, shitting my pants, scared, um, and with a lot of self doubt about like who am I to get on that stage and to sing into a mic? Like, what do I have to say that's valuable to other people? And it's a constant. I definitely now say confidently that I can own that identity of an artist, but it is a constant dance for me still of stepping into that power of like I am good enough, I'm worthy, I have something to share, like what I'm doing is valuable. I'm always like reminding myself of that because it's a hard thing to do. It's
Yeah,
not an easy thing to do.
yeah. It feels like a big risk, right?
Mhm.
Um, the role of art, which is a question I asked that's related to this, I think we might have popped into this. I mean, as far as maybe helping or disrupting, about the role of art. Does the role of art feel different, or you think it's actually different? Say now than it's been historically. I think just maybe modern events and people reacting to, such as the pandemic,
Mhm.
environmental crisis, things of this nature. Do you think art's different, or might have a different role now, or is it kind of this is the environment that humans create things generally? Do you think anything's different nowadays?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that the world is constantly changing and art is a reflection of the world and what's going on. So I think like the art that gets created is always changing. And I think going back to that idea of like that art disturbs the comfortable and comforts the disturbed, I think who those people are depends on who the artist is and what they're addressing in their art. Like so for me that might be like comfort women or people who've had similar experiences to me as someone in a female body in the world, and disturb people who don't have that experience. But if it's somebody else talking about a different issue, a different social issue, or a different personal experience, the people who fit in those categories of comforted or disturbed will be different. Um, and yeah, so I think it depends on the person and place, and definitely the time too. But yeah, I it's a good question. My grandmother was an artist, and um, she she just passed away about a month ago.
Oh, I'm
Actually, she
sorry to
was
hear that.
101 years
Yeah.
old in 4 months.
Wow.
101.
Wow.
Imagine living that long, right?
Yeah.
Um, and she talked about how, um, and I've been really enjoying talking about her and singing about her on stage lately to kind of honor her memory. She talked about how, so she was born in 1921, and when she got her first job, maybe it was like 1930 something, right? She said the only options for women were to work for the phone company, to be a secretary, or to be a teacher. Those were the career options. Or obviously the stay-at-home mom. That's definitely a job as well. And she didn't want to do any of that. So she, her first job was at a photography studio, and she would hand paint color onto black and white photographs. And I just think that that's so amazing to think about that time. And so obviously that's changed because we have color photographs now. But she went on to become an amazing painter and sculptor. And yeah, I think art becomes a reflection of the times that we're in and the experience that we're each personally having in the time and place.
Yeah, not only to, because of the connection you have, the inspiration for you to, to do what you would like to do and kind of to carve that out. I have a best friend, and his grandma is a older Canadian French lady. We use the name Meme, right? But she's my oldest podcast listener. She's 101 too.
Wow.
So yeah, somebody that's been very important to me, and just amazing when you think of, and she's still got a lot of pep and vigor, and asks me how I'm doing and stuff. So shout out to Meme out there. And
Shout out Grandma Roro.
Yeah, she's out in Rhode Island. Blair, I'm super excited because you said you would play. A song, "Tender Lately," and I was wondering if you could do that. I feel pretty special. We should all feel pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. I got my guitar here, and I wanted to play this brand new song because kind of goes on with the theme that we're talking about, that art changes. I think even as a musician, my art changes from album to album, from song to song, because it is a reflection of what's going on in my life. So whereas the last album, Keep Walking, was a lot about moving forward from this painful and very specific experience, a lot of the songs I've been writing lately, and I've written a bunch over the course of this fall, are a bit more about thinking about love and thinking about mortality and death, and with my grandma's passing, I've been thinking a lot about that, and with trying to move forward. So this song's called "Tender Lately." Let's see if I can get a little guitar action in this shot here. Can you hear it okay?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So this is called "Tender Lately," and I think I might name the album after it too. We'll see. It's the working title for now. I've been feeling tender lately, thinking you don't want to be my baby. I've been nearly going crazy, wondering why you won't tell it to me plainly. being ghosted. You've been out of touch, oh, as of lately. Going about your days like you don't know me. You've been down on your luck, I can agree. Holding your breath for a death untimely. Distance makes a lonely heart grow hungry. And I guess you'll just keep living in my dreams. I'll dance till once again I'm feeling lovely. And you'll miss the chance to love me, love me, love me. I don't want to be someone else's fantasy. All I want to do is, darling, dance with you. I don't want to be someone else's fantasy. All I want to do is, honey, dance with you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Blair. That's incredible. Thank you for playing. Um, tell us about tell us about the new stuff coming out. And folks, a lot of listeners here in the Pacific Northwest, and Blair's based in Oregon, and I know you got a show. This podcast will come out before your show and right around the time of some new music. What's going on in December for you?
Yeah, I am going to be releasing a new single called Delight Me in December. So after I wrote this album, Keep Walking, there was lots of breakup songs. I wanted to think about what I want moving forward, how I want to find love. And I wrote this song. We'll play it at the end, right?
Yeah.
That song? Yeah, cool. I wrote the song and then I realized that I was still kind of talking about what I don't want, but it's a bit of a process of elimination. But I am releasing that song, Delight Me, on December 9th, and I'll be playing a couple shows in the Pacific Northwest with Hallie Gregg, who is an artist based in Seattle. We're going to be playing at the Ballard Homestead in Seattle on December 2nd, and then we'll be playing at Mississippi Studios on December 12th with the band. And I play lots of solo shows, but I get the band together every couple months, so it's a special occasion for sure. And then I played that song. I'm going to be starting this month also, or December, to start recording and producing this next album, again with James V.S. I'm excited to be able to continue to work with him and get new music out in the world again. It's nice to have a new project to focus on and soon to share with the world too.
Yeah, we really look forward to that. And Mississippi Studios, just a great venue, really, for people who love sound. and the acoustics there are really incredible. I've seen a lot of great shows there.
Yeah, it really feels like a treat and honor to play on that stage where so many artists that I admire have played before and continue to play.
Yeah, yeah, I remember seeing, I don't know, Emma Ruth Rundle there, and I know Peter Buck has been over there from REM as far as some of the recording and things like that too. So it's a nice stage, Blair.
Yeah, I was playing there as soon as Vanessa Carlton. And I
Okay,
was like,
yeah,
okay, damn.
yeah, 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 incredible. No, that's great. That's absolutely great to hear. I want to ask you over towards another big conceptual question. Uh, Title of the podcast, the question that's met with giggles and frustration at times, but the question formally posed is, why is there something rather than nothing, Blair Borax?
It's a great question. I hate it.
Everybody hates it.
I hate it.
That's why that's why they poisoned Socrates. Philosophers can be annoying. They can ask annoying questions.
Yeah, so the other kind of teaching role that I have been in is that I was a yoga teacher. So
Ah,
I did like a 200-hour training and a 300-hour training, and then I taught for 3 years before I stopped doing that, like in the middle of the pandemic. Um, so I used to spend a lot of time with kind of esoteric questions like that. And as I was thinking about this question, yes, frustration, giggles, mostly frustration actually. But I think in my role as a yoga teacher, and when I was deep in the yoga practice and deep in yoga communities, sometimes I would get frustrated by some of those big esoteric questions, especially once I started to see like some hypocrisy happening between what people think or talk about and what people do.
yeah,
And I'm much more concerned with what people do and how people act in the world. We have one life. We have a choice every day about what we do, how we act, how we treat other people, what kind of habits we form, um, how we respond to conflict. Um, and I think that is a lot more important than like esoteric
yeah,
philosophy conversation. But as I was thinking that through, I think in a way that is also answering your question, because I think there is something rather than nothing, because exactly that, we have one life, whether it's 5 years or 101 years, hopefully not 5 years.
yeah,
Even 101 years, as I was reflecting and as my family was reflecting on my grandmother's life, feels like a blink of the eye. Like it feels like not enough. And we get to choose what we do with that life that we have. And that's certainly something.
yeah. No, I really appreciate that, and I think on philosophy, I've been influenced by philosophers that do. I mean, like one of the famous statements by Karl Marx was, "Philosophers have only interpreted the world thus far. The point, however, is to change it." So I think a lot of times I guess maybe when it comes to philosophy, for me, it's the both, right? It's the using of like the brain power, maybe to figure out or try to get at some of those esoteric things. But I think what you're talking about, if you find out what somebody thinks and you find out what they're saying, whether it's in the yoga community or church community or whatever, well, once you've said it, I think we probably might share this is like, okay, you said it, and what's the doing? What's
Now
the
what?
acting? Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. There's a quote that when I was first starting on that yoga journey from Iyengar, and I probably don't remember it precisely at this moment, but he talks about how humans are caught between earth and sky. So part of us is reconciling, trying to create meaning out of the mundane, or meaning out of this existence that we have, and then also like on the ground we're animals, and what are we doing with this one life? We're animals. We need to like feed ourselves and get all of our needs met and all those things.
I,
But I
I'm sorry
go.
to interrupt, but when you mention those words, one of the thing I haven't done it in a while, but one of an artistic practice which I found pretty profound and kind of captures some of those elements was Japanese flower arranging,
Mhm.
ikebana, which is based on how you form the flowers. That there's an element of ground and horizon in the heavens built within like the structures of how you're presenting things you find out on a hike and maybe sticks and beautiful flowers. And I always thought it was such a marvelous, yeah, I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but the tradition is to bring in those elements so there's a harmony between what you're presenting. And I always thought that was quite beautiful because it was embedded within, the practice itself. um,
Mhm.
I think there's some nice beauty within that. I think a lot of hearing music and notes and the layers can have some of those kind of same effects of the different layers that are impacting you. Um, all right, so the something rather than nothing. I really appreciate. That was a great. You didn't seem too annoyed. That was so wonderful. It's funny because one of the things I want to do on the podcast someday is only capture what would be that space between me asking the questions and the sounds that that the guests make, being like, "Okay, it's the title of the podcast. You said you're going to ask me. It's still annoying."
Yeah, totally. But I
um,
appreciate what you said about change. And it reminded me of like maybe this is my favorite quote when it comes to like philosophy and thinking about spirituality, and it has stayed with me for a long time. It's by Octavia Butler,
oh my gosh.
writer. Yeah, she wrote Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, which is kind of like a prophetic book in a way. It was like a dystopian futurist novel, one of my favorite books. And in that book, the main character, she says, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I love that quote because it reminds me that like all that you touch, you change every day, no matter what you're doing or not doing. You are changing it when you interact it with it or with whom, and all that you change changes you. You're also being changed in the
Yeah.
process, and that the only lasting truth is change. We are constantly changing. We're constantly dealing with change, for better or worse, and that's, I think, a really cool definition of what God is change.
Change. You can't step in the same river, or you can't step in the same river twice. You can't step in the same river once. You can't. It's constant flux. You can't step in those same rivers. You Octavia Butler fan? I adore Octavia
Yeah.
Butler. Yeah. Um, Listeners, I hope you do know about Octavia Butler, but African American science fiction writer of
Mhm.
profound talent, and I think she was I can reasonably say maybe rediscovered amidst the pandemic or within the pandemic about some of her sci-fi speculation and incredible themes of identity and being. So yes, love me some Octavia Butler. um One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Blair, is what has been the I cover a lot of kind of like Portland music. It just ends up where a lot of listeners in Oregon and in Portland. What has it been for you to kind of connect with other artists? I know you've played for Larissa Birdseye, who's been on the podcast, wonderful guest.
Mhm.
Matt Brewster plays with her, has been on the podcast. What's your
Mhm.
experience been like? Kind of, it was new to you as starting out as far as connecting to the, say, the music scene in Portland.
Yeah, that's such a good question because the Portland music scene has been such a like a sweet, welcoming, nurturing environment for me to grow as an artist and as a person. I started, well, back in 2018, my friend Austin Farrell, who's a musician in town as well, he asked me if I would open for him. And at the time, I thought that was like an insane idea, but I still said yes.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I had never performed in public before. I had never like used a microphone or plugged in to my guitar, you know. And so he took me to an open mic, the Eastburn open mic, with Callie and Brian of Shady Pines Radio. Now they run
Yeah.
Shady Pines Radio, um, and they started just by hosting open mics, and that was my first time performing. And Callie actually took some photos that day, so I have pictures of like professional photos of the first time I ever performed in public, which is a pretty cool moment in
Wonderful.
time to capture. And then from there, I continued to like go to different open mics at the Waypost, and eventually I found this open mic at Mississippi Pizza, called the Atlantis Underground, every Tuesday night through the fall and winter seasons, through the sad seasons, so we can
Yeah.
create some community and warmth during the gray rainy months. Christopher Worth and Jacob Westfall run that open mic, and I started going there right before the pandemic, and I again went there so nervous because there's a lot of really talented people that play there, and eventually those really talented people all became my friends in my community, and I've grown so much through those relationships and through the practice of getting on stage, and it really feels like a supportive place in the singer-songwriter community that people want to lift each other up and not tear each other down or compete with each other.
Supportive art community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
grateful for that, for sure. I don't think
Another.
if I got the guitar and I lived in LA or I lived in another place, I may not have found the confidence to get up on stage and keep going.
Yeah, but once you did it, then you did it, and then everything's behind you, right? So.
Yeah, that is addicting once you once you get there.
Yeah. Performance.
Mhm.
Um, what about one other question before I'm gonna ask you generally to make sure folks can find out where all your videos, photos, and where all the music is. But I just wanted to ask, uh, just right before that, what about you doing yoga? Is there any connection between that towards creating art? I know for folks like even physically, some of the physical stuff as far as like breathing, and
Yeah.
I've read a lot about a lot of singers, and they'll talk about yoga mostly, and then a little bit
Yeah.
more than that. What was your experience with how yoga came in, and how its relation to you doing art?
Yeah. Well, if you listen to my first EP, I released a 5-song EP in May 2021, and that one's called Everything is Light Work. I started working on it right before the pandemic, and we had to kind of pause everything during that time, so it came out a bit later. But if you listen to that EP, you'll hear a lot more like, yoga themes to it. And so I think at the beginning, it definitely was very distinctly connected, the my yoga practice and songwriting and performing, definitely on the physical level, learning how to breathe properly and learning about the diaphragm has helped me become a better, stronger singer. Singing is a very physical practice, and just trying to be mindful of like, where is the sound coming from in my body? Where do I want it to come from? And I think the yoga practice in general helped me to just connect with myself and understand myself and be able to express myself. And I think it did help open that that door to songwriting and singing.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I've done yoga myself, and it's really helped. The biggest thing for me is I've noticed that it's helped me control the pace of my breathing and breathing through my nose, where the
Mm-hmm.
actual breathing practice I was engaged in was creating the anxiety of fast breathing. So it's a chicken or the egg type of thing. Am I breathing off because I'm anxious, or is the breathing is I'm anxious that creates the breathing? And I know yoga has been a big help for me with that and breathing techniques. All right, Blair, where does everybody go to find, best find your music? I know you're in Bandcamp and like your visuals on Instagram. I know you're very interested in display a lot of beautiful photography, of which some of you're the subject of. So tell people like where to find you.
Yeah, if you Google my name, Blair Borax, you'll find me in all sorts of places. You can find me, you can find my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, wherever you listen, Tidal, wherever you listen to your music. Um, you can follow me on Instagram, or more recently TikTok. I'm trying to get on the TikTok thing.
Woo!
Both of those handles are Blair Art Thou, and that's where I keep updated about upcoming shows and music releases, and just kind of more personally what's happening in my life. It's where I keep in contact with friends and fans, and I do enjoy the sharing on Instagram. And yeah, you can also find my upcoming calendar on my website, blairborax.com, as well as bands in town. And I've got an online merch shop. You can purchase CDs and vinyl records and merch if you want to.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Thanks for letting us know. I One thing I wanted to mention you, I like Blair and Thou. One of my favorite philosophy works is by the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber, and he wrote
Mhm.
I and Thou. And
Okay.
not a well-known work nowadays. I think it was much more popular during the heyday of mid 20th century existentialism, but a really beautiful book about our relationship as humans between people and be things and things, and the idea that what we want to establish is an I and thou relationship as opposed to the
Mhm.
relationships that we have. So when I see your Instagram, I think of I and thou and Blair and thou. So just my philosopher brain, I figure I'd convey
That's
that to
cool.
you.
I came up with that in high school somehow, and it stood the test of time.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, folks, Martin Buber is a great Jewish seen as an existentialist philosopher of last century, and the book I and Thou about relationships, how we relate to folks. So Blair Borax, I got to tell you, as you know, I tend to be an enthusiast and love the art and the artists that I bring on, and I find your music very impactful. I very much looking forward to seeing you live and hear the new music you got coming out. So thanks for spending the time, and actually thanks for playing. It's really special kind of thing for the show and for the listeners to hear what you're playing right from you and hear what you're thinking about in your kind of your story. So I wanted to thank you deeply, Blair, for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ken. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and one more thing, Blair. We're gonna have a track at the end of
Mm.
this. Did you want to tell folks a little bit about that track?
Yeah, this song is called Delight Me. I mentioned it a little bit before. It's about moving forward, trying to find love, kind of a little bit of what I want and a lot of bit of what I don't want, a process of elimination. But it's a joyful, cutesy tune, and I hope you enjoy it. It'll be
Nope.
out on all platforms on December 9th, 2022.
That's wonderful. Here's for joyful, cutesy tunes.
Yes.
Blair Borax, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to meet you and to enjoy your art.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it.
I don't want no hot and heavy. Give me your slow and steady. I don't want no fast and fury. Wait till we're right and ready. I don't want my head over my heels. These feet will touch the ground, I feel. I don't want to lose myself in you and find my heart so black and blue. My heart so black and blue. Ooh, ooh. So move slowly, for good in plenty of time. We'll see if you'll delight me. I don't want no now or never. Don't take my time, I'll take mine. I don't want to hurry up and hurt. Say sorry, say it never. I don't want to fall flat in love, become someone you'll get sick of. I don't want to go through hell or high water. High water. So move slowly, for good in plenty of time. We'll see if you'll delight me. But you can't rush a river. You can't storm the sea. So wait for me like winter for water. If you want to move with me, so move slowly, for good and plenty of time. We'll see if you'll delight me. Slowly, for good and plenty of time. We'll see if you'll delight me. Slowly, for good and plenty of time. We'll see if you'll delight me.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.